Hey everybody, Alex Kazora, SteelersDepot.com back with some Pittsburgh Steelers draft analysis and prediction. Had the article go up on Steelers Depot earlier this week, Monday morning. I'll put a link to that article in the description below. But for today's video, as you guys can tell, the video version of my Pittsburgh Steelers final predictive mock draft in 2022. And again, just to be clear, this is based on what I think the team would do, what I'm predicting the team would do, not necessarily my personal thoughts of what I would love to see happen. And so just want to make that very clear because I get asked about that quite a bit. So I'm sure a lot of this will be wrong. If I get two picks right, I'm happy. That's kind of my bar. We'll see if that even happens. But here are my selections and predictions for the Steelers starting Thursday night. At number 20 overall, going quarterback here with Desmond Ritter from Cincinnati. And I really struggled and wrestled with what quarterback to put here. I believe it is the clear frontrunner position to be drafted. Not that it's a guarantee to be drafted. There are so many variables and so much uncertainty to consider, both with where Pittsburgh's picking at number 20 and just the class as a whole without there really being consensus throughout the entire group of who's worth a first round pick, who's the top quarterback, etc. So I think Malik Willis is their top quarterback, the guy from Liberty, and if he starts to slip, maybe gets past say Carolina 6, perhaps. You certainly could see Pittsburgh trade up and make an aggressive move as they did in 2019 for Devin Bush. Right or wrong, I think that is certainly on the table for the Steelers right now. But failing that, and if Willis does not get to Pittsburgh at 20, which he could, but I don't think it would happen still, I'm going Ritter. And more to the point about Ritter, since he was the pick here, I think Pittsburgh would certainly appreciate and respect what Ritter has done for that Bearcats program in terms of being a leader, being a winner, won 44 games, or I think he went 44-6 in his time in Cincinnati. The year before he got there, they won 4 games. Once he started taking over that team, they won double digit games, three out of the 4 seasons, the other one 9 wins in a COVID shortened year. And they go to the college football playoff this past year. They got some big wins, and they certainly put that program on the map. Ritter's athletic, he's mobile. That's going to be important for the Steelers. And I think he ran a bit more of a pro style offense than some of the other quarterbacks in this class, like a Sam Howell, like a Matt Corral, like a Malik Willis. And so I think there's a bit of an easier projection there for Pittsburgh. And so obviously they were at his pro day, they had dinner with him, they was brought in for a pre-draft visit. That's true of all the top quarterbacks in this class. But overall, I think the intangibles Mike Tomlin's gonna love, and that's why I go Desmond Ritter. In round two, number 52, overall, going Nick Cross, the safety from Maryland. And that's a guy that certainly checks all the boxes that Pittsburgh seems to look for when they're drafting, particularly when they're drafting safeties. He's got good size at 6 foot 215. He's hyper athletic, a 987 RAS score. He's really young. I believe he's the youngest player in this entire draft at 20 and a half years old. Of course, he's from the Power Five. That's important. And he was roommates with Dino Tomlin, Mike Tomlin's son, at Maryland before he transferred to, I believe, Boston College. And so, kind of checking all those boxes. Terrell Edmonds was brought back on a 1 year deal, but certainly does not preclude this team from adding a more long term option. And Cross would be that guy that would sit more in year one, potentially play in sub packages, and then probably becomes your starter in 2023. Round three, number 84 overall, going Marcus Jones, the corner from Houston. And I'll admit, thinking back a little bit, I might have gone with Cross in the third and put a guy like Daniel Faalele in the second round, the big tackle from Minnesota, but that's all besides the point. For Jones, he was brought in for a pre-draft visit, so there's some obvious interest there. And I think Pittsburgh really wants to try to find that more defined slot corner. They did not have that guy last year in terms of trying to replace Mike Hilton. A lot of different guys tried to wear that hat. None really had that full time role. And while a guy like Cam Sutton could play inside, I think should play inside more than he has. Pittsburgh's never been seemingly super enthused about the idea in a trade. Norwood, I think, certainly has earned more playing time in year number two, but does he profile as that slot corner in that Hilton type of mold? I don't think he does. Now, Jones probably isn't Hilton 1-to-1 either. He's a little bit smaller and not quite the impactful hitter, but overall, he is the kind of that twitchy, aggressive mentality, downhill slot guy with probably better coverage skills than Mike Hilton. Really good with the ball in the air. He's physical. Had a great game against Calvin Austin in Memphis. I think he picked off Ritter in a game against Cincinnati at some point in his career, and so there's some good tape. There's some injury concerns. He had surgeries on both shoulders this year, which is not good for a guy of his size. But if he's cleared medically, which the pre-draft visit might indicate that he is, that I think that's a guy that would fit in that kind of defined slot role. Plus, he can return kicks and punts. I don't know if Tomlin would ever use him there, given his history of not using defensive players, but that's something to consider as well. Fourth round, number 138, Justyn Ross, the receiver from Clemson. Receiver might be a little bit late here, and Ross, frankly, is a really tough guy to predict and project where he's going to go because there's a lot of medical issues with Ross that muddies up where his draft stock really lies. This guy burst on a college football scene, was a really big recruit from Alabama, turns down Bama, goes to Clemson, was a really big story back then, but he had a heck of a first 2 years in college football, 2018, 2019, him and Trevor Lawrence. Man, they had some really big plays and big moments together. Then he gets diagnosed with a spinal issue in 2020, has surgery, misses the entire season, comes back for 2021, tries to play through a stress fracture in his foot. The production tanks. There's a new quarterback. They've had quarterback issues at Clemson, and he shuts things down, I think, in late November. So he tries to get healthy for the pre-draft process, which he did. He did work out, but did not test well at his pro day. But the positives are he's big, he's long, he can make difficult catches, has a big catch radius, and if this guy gets back to being healthy, this could be tremendous value in that third, fourth round. Of course, fourth round right here. Pittsburgh attended his pro day, including receivers coach Frisman Jackson, who personally put Ross through the workout. Dabo Sweeney loves this guy. Sweeney and Colbert and Tomlin and Pittsburgh and Clemson all have really close relationships. So I'm sure Sweeney's advocating for this guy in the best possible terms. And a really interesting connection here, the doctor who performed the spinal surgery on Ross is the Pittsburgh Steelers team neurosurgeon. And so there's probably some inside insight in terms of the medical that may make Pittsburgh more comfortable with where Ross stands than other teams. And so for all those reasons, that potential big slot in that mold of Juju, I think Ross makes sense here in round four. Would I personally like this move? Probably not. There's a lot of question marks there, but I could see Pittsburgh taking Ross. Round six, 208 overall, Eric Johnson, the defensive lineman from Missouri State, another guy that was brought in for a pre-draft visit. Pittsburgh does not often dip their toes into the FCS waters, but when they have, you've seen a couple linemen, defensive linemen come out of that group, whether you're talking Nick Williams, a seventh round pick from Stanford, who is still playing in the NFL, believe it or not, and Javon Hargrave, of course, a third round pick out of South Carolina State. So Johnson, he played at the Senior Bowl, and so you got some tape on him against Power Five guys and top competition. That's important to see. He's a good athlete overall. Ran a 4.87 at his pro day. He checks every single box and are what they look for studies in terms of the defensive alignment. And he's 6'4", 300 pounds, long, 34-inch arms. He runs to the football. That's, of course, very important in this system. Under Carl Dunbar, you watch Hayward chase the ball all over the field. You don't have to teach that with Eric Johnson. And it'll add some depth there with that uncertainty about what's going to happen with Stephon too. It's still probably the biggest outstanding question right now when it comes to the current present day roster for Pittsburgh. So Eric Johnson, this could be a touch late. I could see this guy go a bit earlier in the draft, but he may slip a bit just because of these smaller school competition concerns. He's the pick here in round six. The first of two seventh round picks, 225 overall, going Leddie Brown, the running back from West Virginia. When it comes to the Steelers, they really have a true type at running back, a clearer type there than probably any other position that they draft. They want guys who have size, that are pretty big dudes, that have some power, that come from the Power Five, and prove they were capable of handling a full time workload in college. Being that workhorse back that Mike Tomlin always talks about, and of course drafted last year in Najee Harris. And so Brown checks those boxes. He's 6 foot, 215. He does have some power. He's a little bit of a taller guy, kind of a James Conner type of body type, but Power Five, obviously. And then he carried the ball well over 200 times last year's back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons for the Mountaineers. So assistant coach Blaine Stewart put Brown through his workout at his pro day. I think he can catch the ball well. He's not going to have a lot of burst and big playability, and people won't like to hear that, and I get that. But Pittsburgh, they don't really care about speed too much. They want size and bulk in that frame, and Brown hits all those notes. Last pick here, round 7, 241 overall. Bit of a curveball, going with not one, but two quarterbacks in this mock draft. Second quarterback here after selecting Desmond Ritter in the first round, Chris Oladokun, the quarterback from South Dakota State, another guy brought in for a pre-draft visit Pittsburgh at his pro day. He's gotten a lot of buzz in terms of other teams being interested, bringing him in for visits elsewhere and private workouts being held and things like that. So if Pittsburgh wants to get this guy, trying to lure him as a undrafted free agent might be tough to do. And so I think you want to draft the guy to kind of ensure that you get him. He's athletic. He's got a really interesting career. This dude was at two different high schools, three different colleges, began his college career at South Florida, then transferred to Samford, and actually believe was the man who replaced Doug Hodges at Samford. Ended up losing the job there, and so he transfers to South Dakota State, and they have a really good season this year. It's kind of really built through the run game. They got Pierre Strong, another running back. They ran for like 3,000 yards as a team, but Ola Duncan is slighter frame, but athletic, a decent arm overall, and Pittsburgh has shown interest. So I know two quarterbacks in one mock draft, especially with only 7 picks, is unusual to see. I would just say they're going to have 4 quarterbacks on this roster. They don't have to do it through the draft in terms of 2 draft picks, but they will have to add another quarterback at some point if they add one in the first place, as we're mocking there with Ritter in the first round. And it's such an important position. You want to add as much talent and competition as possible. And it's happened before with RG3 and Kirk Cousins. That's a more extreme example, first and fourth round picks, but it happened with Andrew Luck in, I think it was 2011 with him, of course, and Chandler Harnish was that year's Mr. Irrelevant. Happened in '08 with Brian Brom, their second round pick. The Packers did not have a first round pick that year. And then with Matt Flynn in the seventh round, and Flynn ended up having the better career of the two guys. So it's rare, but it has happened before, and I think it makes sense. So that is my mock draft. I'll put up all the names on screen one last time for you guys to let me know what you think about this mock draft. I know a lot of people did not like this. Again, this is predictive in terms of what I think the team would do, not my personal thoughts. We'll see what happens. It'll be a lot of fun. Let me know your mock draft. List out the 7 picks and tell me who you think the team would take or who you think the team should take. However you want to do it is cool with me. But we'll certainly have a ton of post draft coverage here in terms of who they actually take, analyze that, some film room breakdowns, hopefully, on the channel. Certainly, you'll see them on Steelers Depot. So be sure to check out the website during draft weekend. Enjoy the draft, guys. We'll talk to you soon.